Hey, what's up? Today we're going to be looking at the Serpent Hunter. Did you know that 2 frames is all it takes to ruin a weapon? You see this crouch attack here? This is now frame 15, whereas before patch 1.12 it was frame 13. While 2 frames may not sound like that much, it makes the move clunky and feel half as quick as it used to be. You might be wondering if a single attack being slightly slower is all that big of a deal. Well, at least in the case of the Serpent Hunter, the answer is unequivocally yes. Yes, it is. For starters, the Ash of War is an absolute meme. While yes, it does hit hard, it's also so slow that you're not going to hit it on a half-conscious opponent, though it is quite funny to try and do so. And then all of your R2 variations are not going to be very good. Your standing R2, while it is a horizontal swipe, is going to be very poor in comparison to the type that the Tree Sentinel gets. And your running R2 is one of the worst running attacks in the entire game. And while the jumping R2 is not horrendous per se, it does anti-air other people that are jumping at you. It's also not very good because it doesn't get to enjoy any type of thrust counter damage due to it being an overhead swipe. And while the standing, running, and jumping R1 are all pretty decent moves, they are slow enough that they are not able to carry the weapon. You need one final attack that is faster, that is able to scare people into making bad decisions for these attacks to really shine. The last piece of that puzzle used to be the crouch attack, which was extremely quick, and when you wave dash and move around like you have Adderall running through your veins, would make it borderline unreactable. And I know that people get scared when they hear of unreactable attacks, and people get angry when they think about a crouch attack being the best thing a weapon has. The truth of the matter is that a crouch-based weapon has a lot of hurdles it has to overcome to become really scary. The crouch animation itself takes quite a while to complete, so while yes, the move is very quick, it's not going to be something that somebody can use when they are put into hit stun. And any weapon that's extremely reliant on wave dashing also runs a very high and common risk of you accidentally eating roll inputs. Oftentimes when you're trying to aggress on somebody while wave dashing, they will start queuing up an R1, and it's at the perfect moment where you press the roll button and nothing happens. Due to these limitations, if you go back around a year ago, the Serpent Hunter was one of the most loved try-hard weapons in the game. It wasn't considered the absolute peak of the meta per se, it was more so considered a very strong off-meta choice. It's still made for one of the most interesting vortex weapons in the game. Yes, you were forcing your opponent to make hard choices before they got to react to what you were doing, but you too had to make a lot of correct guesses to get you there. And when you combine the fact that you didn't have some broken Ash of War, and you also didn't have the world's greatest damage, it made for one of the highest skill expression weapons in the entire game. If you want to see what a Serpent Hunter main looks like when they've unlocked their final form, then I recommend you look up Anishu's channel, where she's extremely capable at making people panic with her extremely sporadic movement. However, when 1.10 came strolling around, the Serpent Hunter got one of the most unnecessary buffs you could imagine. It gained a significant amount of hyper armor, and it immediately became one of the most hated weapons in the game. All it took was around 90 poise for the Serpent Hunter to start effortlessly hyper armoring through the majority of R1s and R1 variations in the game, bar the Colossal Swords mostly. And the cherry on top is that every single time you attack with a hyper armor move, it resets your poise value, meaning that one of the most skillful matchups in the entire game immediately became one of the most skillless, that being a Serpent Hunter player versus another Serpent Hunter player. While the hyper armor changes were strong, it didn't make the weapon start dominating tournaments or anything, as it still had bad matchups against other strong weapons. However, it did become one of the more annoying weapons you'd come across in the arena, since a lot of players started using it, and using it for the wrong reasons. They would hyper armor just about everything you do, rather than actually trying to use good fundamentals. And here we are in current day, patch 1.12, with the Serpent Hunter being an absolute shell of its former self, having hyper armor it never needed, and losing its most skillful attack. With that being said, it is able to still find quite a bit of success, but I will be honest, it's nowhere near as fun as it used to be. Now, it is almost purely outclassed by its peers, even on strength characters, where it's at its strongest. While it does do more damage than the Great Lance and the Mesmer Soldier Great Spear, it is going to be shorter than those options, not have a good Ash of War, or that is to say have the ability to have Ashes of War put on it. It's not going to be able to have resins put on it, and in the case of the Mesmer Soldier Great Spear, it does not have near as good of an R2. But let's say you refuse to let the changes dim your spirits and you still want to use this weapon anyway. What can you do to make it stand out from the other great spears? Despite its lackluster moveset nowadays, it is still the most damaging great spear on a strength character. So what you can do is use a plethora of talismans to make it as strong as possible when going for counter trades. If you combine the two-handed talisman with the spear talisman, and specifically look to punish poor approaches with the R1, then you might actually find that it does a lot of damage, being able to hit as much as 700 plus on a standing R1. And now since the arena refunds the items that you can use Exalted Flesh to boost your physical damage even higher at no charge. When it comes to invasions, even Old Serpent Hunter wasn't considered very good. While yes, you could vortex one person to Kingdom Come, all of your worthwhile moves attack right in front of you, meaning that you're not able to keep crowds of people off of yourself, and your Ash of War once again is completely worthless. Despite this, you can still find quite a bit of success against less experienced players. If they're the type of people you notice will spam out of hit stun, then oftentimes they can catch a super-powered counter hit to the face if they're not careful. And if they're the type that are going to infinitely panic roll, the running R1 and the standing R1 are very easy to land on people who are mindlessly rolling. What annoys me so much about the changes it just received is that they could have just reverted what they did in patch 1.10 and given us a much more satisfying weapon. On top of that, they took the time to make this change that made the weapon so much less fun when in 2 days they would open the floodgates to the DLC, adding a plethora of weapons and Ashes of War that were more broken than the game has ever seen, making you wonder why they even took the time to do this in the first place. Now, it's going to live in infamy as a weapon that is a complete shell of its former self, both in terms of balance and fun factor, and it will remain being the poster child of one of the craziest glitches this game has ever seen, that being the chainsaw glitch. I'm not joking, that is how I beat this boss my first time. It is truly sad to see how much From Software hates weapons that are vortex-based, but hey, at least we still have power stance great spears. At least for now.